In the 17th and 18th centuries, enslaved Africans are brought to Trinidad by force. They come from different parts of West Africa, from different peoples and different traditions, and they bring almost nothing with them. But they do bring their knowledge, and part of that knowledge is drumming. Drumming in West Africa is not just music, it's language. Specific rhythms carry specific meanings across distances. It's how communities communicate and how ceremonies are conducted. The British colonial authorities in Trinidad understand this perfectly, which is exactly why they fear it. A drum that can carry a message across the hills is a drum that can organize a rebellion. So they're quick to ban the drums. The first prohibitions on African drumming in Trinidad date to the late 19th century. And they're formalized and extended over the following decades as part of a broader campaign to control and suppress the cultural and religious life of Afro-Trinidadian communities. And also the carnival celebration, which has become the one moment in the year when Black Trinidadians can gather, sing, and move together. Carnival is subject to constant attempts at restriction and control. Then, in 1884, after a series of confrontations between carnival participants and the colonial police, the authorities passed the Peace Preservation Ordinance. This law bans drumming on drums made of skin, it bans stick fighting, and it bans the burning cane processions that are part of the Camboulet tradition. Authorities frame it as a matter of public order, but it's really the legal removal of another piece of African cultural life. The people of Port of Spain, the capital of Trinidad, respond the way they always respond. They find new ways to get away from colonial oppression. The hillsides around the city are full of wild bamboo, and that can be cut to different lengths and beat against the ground and each other to produce melody and rhythm. And so the tambour bamboo bands, as they come to be called, become the new music of carnival. By the early 20th century, they are everywhere. Every neighborhood has one, and they are the sound of the streets. Then, in 1934, the British banned the tambour bamboo as well. The official reason given is public safety and the prevention of violence between rival bands. Now, that concern is not entirely invented, because there is a real rivalry between the bands, and it sometimes turns violent. But the timing and pattern are hard to ignore. Every time Black Trinidadians build a cultural form of their own, the authorities find a reason to take it. So the bamboo is no longer an option, and the people of Port of Spain have to find other ways to make music. They use biscuit tins, paint cans, and garbage lids. None of these are designed to make music, but that don't matter. Because when you hit a piece of metal in different places, it produces different sounds. And when you dent it, you change the pitch. And when you have enough people experimenting with enough pieces of metal for enough years, a new instrument is born. By the late 1930s, all metal bands are appearing at Carnival. By 1940, they've become the preferred company of the young men from the poorer neighborhoods of Port of Spain. And then the war comes, and with it, the Americans. In 1940, Britain is in serious trouble. The war in Europe is going badly, and Winston Churchill needs American support. Franklin Roosevelt is willing to help, but America is not yet in the war, and he wants something in return for involvement. The two men make a deal: 50 American warships in exchange for a 99-year lease on military bases in British territories across the Caribbean and Atlantic. Trinidad is one of those territories. Nobody asks the people of the island. The island is a British colony, so the British decide. So the Americans arrive, they build their naval and air base, and that's that. The American military presence on the island lasts through the war and beyond. And when it winds down, the Americans leave behind what military operations always leave behind: equipment, infrastructure, and many thousands of 55-gallon steel oil drums. These drums were used to transport and store petroleum products. They are industrial containers. They are also made of exactly the right kind of steel, in exactly the right dimensions to produce a remarkable range of musical tones if you know how to work them. Ellie Mannette knows how to work them. Mannette is born in 1927 in Port of Spain. From childhood, he has an unusual relationship with metal. He is drawn to how things are made, how they sound, how their properties change when you apply heat or pressure. As a young teenager, he gets involved in one of the percussion bands, an ensemble called the Oval Boys. The Oval Boys are part of the wave of bands that have moved from bamboo to metal in the late 1930s. They play biscuit tins and break drums and whatever else they can find. When Mannette starts bringing oil drums home from the port on his bicycle, he is experimenting with a material that is different from anything the bands have worked with before. The 55-gallon drum is larger, heavier, and made of thicker steel than a biscuit tin, obviously, and it has more surface area to work with. And Mannette begins to explore what it can do. Now, the critical innovation he arrives at is sinking the top of the drum inward, creating a concave playing surface. Previous instruments used convex surfaces, which produced a sound but limited how many distinct notes you could fit into a single drum. The concave surface allows Mannette to arrange more note areas around the face of the drum without them interfering with each other acoustically. More notes means more range means more intricate melodies. He is, to be clear, not working from any textbook. He has no formal training in any of this. He's just a young man with good hands and a good ear, working by trial and error somewhere in a yard in Port of Spain. A few miles away, in the community of Junkyard, a man named Winston Spree Simon is doing something related but distinct. Where Mannette is primarily a builder and innovator, Simon is a musician with an extraordinary ear who understands intuitively what the new metal instruments are capable of. In 1946, at Carnival, he plays a 14-note instrument in the street parade that passes in front of the governor's stand. He plays Schubert's Ave Maria. And he plays the national anthem. The assembled crowd stops dead in its tracks. This moment matters because it is the first time that the people who have the power to take things away are forced to listen. They've been dismissing the steel bands for years, treating the pan men as nuisances at best and criminals at worst. But now, one of those pan men is playing European classical music on a garbage drum in a way that makes the crowd stop moving and stare in awe. Simon knows exactly what he's doing. He's not playing Ave Maria because he loves Schubert so much. He's playing it because he knows that the people who need to be convinced of the pan's legitimacy will hear European classical music as proof of seriousness in a way that Calypso will not. You see, the world that Mannette and Simon live in is not a world that wants to hear them. The colonial government has banned drums, bamboo, and will apply the old noisy instrument ordinances to the steel bands in turn. Then in 1951, the government decides to send a steel band to London. Britain is hosting the Festival of Britain, a national celebration meant to lift the country's spirit after the war. And someone decides that the Trinidad Steel Orchestra should be a part of it. The government wants and needs the pan men, but it also wants and needs for them to be presentable for a majority white British audience. So they bring in a Barbadian military bandmaster named Lieutenant Joseph Griffith, and they tell him to prepare the ensemble. Griffith finds the best tuners and players from across Port of Spain. Mannette, Simon, and 9 others, most of them barely in their 20s. He spends months working with them to build entirely new instruments, tune everything to concert pitch, and arrange a proper multi-part repertoire. When the 11 men arrive in London and begin moving their instruments into the venue, a British newspaper photographs them and runs a caption that reads, "These are not the dustmen removing the dustbins, but the Trinidad Steel Band moving their booms and ping-pongs." The British press think this is a charming joke, but to the band, it's no joke. They have spent years building something extraordinary out of materials that were discarded. They've been called criminals and vagabonds for doing it. And they've just carried those instruments across an ocean to perform in the capital of the empire that took their ancestors' drums in the first place. They play on the 26th of July for a skeptical crowd, but the crowd starts tapping its feet and is soon convinced by the music. The men come home as national heroes, and the following year, for the first time in its history, the National Music Festival that has always been reserved for classical music includes steel pan. The upper crust of Trinidad society, the people who have spent years calling the pan men vagabonds, now see steel pan as a legitimate art form. Because, London said so. Ellie Mannette spends the rest of his life building pans. He turns down a scholarship to study music in London in 1948 because he doesn't want to leave his instruments behind. He eventually moves to the United States in the 1960s, builds the United States Navy Steel Band, and ends up at West Virginia University, where he spends decades teaching students how to make and tune pans. His instruments end up in the Smithsonian Institution and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. He dies in 2018 at the age of 90, still tuning. Winston Simon dies in 1976. Lord Kitchener, the great calypsonian from Trinidad, records a tribute to him in 1975. It's meant as a plea to his countrymen to show more generosity to the aging veterans of the steel band movement. Men who have given everything to something that has become a source of national pride, but has not always been treated accordingly. In 2023, the United Nations declares August 11th World Steel Pan Day, a day that recognizes the steel pan as the only major acoustic instrument invented in the 20th century.